Hello, my fellow readers. In this video, I'm going to talk about And Now I Spill the Family Secrets. And this is a graphic novel memoir by Margaret Kimball. It's technically an illustrated memoir because it's not really a graphic novel. She really just illustrates like depictions of the event, and a lot of it is just textual. This book is a fascinating look at a family's struggle with generational mental illness. That makes sense. So for her, when she was very young, her mother attempted suicide and ended up being put in in a mental institution so that she could have a break. And there was more times than just that once that her mother had various breakdowns and I think attempted suicide. I can't remember if there was one or two more times that she attempted it outside of that. And a lot of it wasn't talked about. So even in the book, she talks about how her brother called her and brought up the fact that that happened. And she sets out on a quest to uncover that aspect of her mother by researching different things that her mother wrote about and left, and then family videos and pictures, and really just trying to get a grasp on the family's mental health and why it wasn't shared. And then also there are bits about her recognizing that her brother might be mentally ill and not getting help, and it not being recognized. And also I think it's her maternal grandmother. I believe it's her maternal grandmother anyway, also suffered from mental illness and the impact that had on the family and doing stuff. So I believe she was institutionalized as well. And so it is just this multi-generational impact of mental health on the family, but also taking a look at how it's, especially in the past, always tried to just keep it hidden instead of being addressed and looking for better solutions. It's buried. So that's why it's And Now I Spill the Family Secrets. And she tried to do this in a very respectful way, and also getting her family's approval. So even though it has like this very, and now I spill the family secrets, feeling to it, she did want to make sure that she was respectful to her entire family. So a lot of the names have been changed from her actual siblings. And it's just presented in a very honest, non-judgmental way. And a lot of it, too, will be from her perspective about things that she experienced and maybe didn't recognize as something to be concerned with at the time, but also just how it impacted her as she was going about her daily life. So for her, especially after the very bad suicide attempt, things didn't end up working out between her parents, and they got separated. And so a big part of the book too is just the differences in home life between when she'd be with her mother and when she'd be with her father. And she talks about how her father's place would be quiet and calming, and it was the one place where she could just sort of take a break, whereas at her mother's house it always seemed chaotic and there was a lot going on. Now, she loved her mother. She didn't want to be separated from either parent. It wasn't like that level, but it was just a much more chaotic feeling for her, where she didn't feel as restful as when she would go to her father's house. But then on top of that, there's other issues that come into play, like her father gets remarried and dealing with her stepmother. But it's just a very honest quick look at a family and the impact that the family can have on one another. So even though you have shared experiences, that whole experience isn't the same. So it's a shared experience, but it's not the same experience. So your siblings might remember an event differently than you do, and the impact that that event had on you is going to be different from the impact that it had on them. And depending on the mental health of each individual, it can have a vastly different impact. I like that whole idea here of the impact that we have on one another, because I do think very often we are self-absorbed. I mean, I think we were designed that way intentionally so that we would survive, but we are fairly self-absorbed where it is, you know, this is my life and I'm going to make the choices that I want to make for my life. Not realizing that, yes, it is your life, but that decision also impacts this person, and you should be aware of that. That doesn't mean you have to change your choice. It just means you should be aware that you aren't alone in this life. Like, as much as you are making a choice for your life alone, it actually isn't, because it does have an impact on other people. This is obviously very easy to see, like when it comes to the father and his remarriage, because it is his choice to get remarried, and I'm sure he had certain thoughts and expectations about that marriage, but that marriage directly impacted his kids that he had from his previous marriage. And because they were from his previous marriage, there might have always been a little bit of an issue between the kids and your new wife. That kind of thing, it does happen. And again, it's not that you have to make a different choice. It's just that you should acknowledge that, especially if there are other considerations that you might have been better of being aware of beforehand. And I think that's the big thing, like, I would take away from this too. Like in that case, if steps had been taken in an awareness of the impact that this now joined life is going to have, then maybe you could make other choices to make sure that the relationship stays healthy, that everybody is feeling heard and validated, and maybe it won't lead to a secondary divorce and failure of a relationship. So yes, any choice that you make in your life, it is your life and your choice, but also you are a part of the world, and presumably that choice also impacts other people. And you should be aware of that, just because there could be consequences of that action that come back to you later. Does that make sense? To me it makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense to everybody. Like, just be aware of it, because things could come back to bite you. So it's not that you don't make that, but maybe you can take other steps to have a softer bite come back, rather than, oh, where's this coming from? I don't know. Getting that out of there is interesting. But I think also just seeing generational mental health issues. We have, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, medically proven that, yes, if something bad happens in your family, one can actually change and modify your DNA so that you will be more prone to having anxiety and depression in your family. It actually modifies the DNA for that, which I think is fascinating. So if mental health issues of any kind are in your family, one, there could have been a reason generations back that impacted it that you're not aware of, because you could be thinking, why am I having these problems when my life has been fairly good, quote unquote. And it might be that if you research generations, that you discover that something happened in the past and this actually impacted your genetic makeup and might make you more prone to being depressed or having anxiety. And in this case, we do see 3 generations of mental illness, and they all vary in what is happening. And her brother, I don't know what is going to happen with him or where that stands. Reading it, he seemed to have a form of schizophrenia, but I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and I don't think he gets diagnosed with anything. It's just reading it that, and knowing on a personal level what that looks like, that seemed to be what was happening with him. But again, it's like it's not that you can't live a perfectly normal, okay life, having mental illness. I do still hope that if he is struggling at all, that he gets help. But this wasn't a book to force that upon him. So I thought it was just interesting. It was just a look at, these are my family stories, and these are issues that we've had to deal with, that deal with mental health, whether it be schizophrenia or depression. This is what the family's dealt with, and this is how we've handled some of these situations, and was that the right way or not? But I thought it was really good, and it was a fairly quick read. I mean, considering the size of it, there's a lot packed in here, but it was interesting. It was she had an interesting family. They weren't, it was normal. It was fairly normal. But it was just interesting seeing what they had to deal with and what choices they made, or how overlooked certain things would be. It wasn't when an issue wasn't necessarily made out of what they were actually having to go through. So I did find that very interesting. Anyway, I would recommend it. I thought it was good. If you do like things that deal with family stories and maybe even mental illness, I like this one. And that really is it for this video. So until next time, bye.